Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hi, I'm Sue Rose Minahan and host of Talk Cosmos. We're an astrological conversational program every week. And this week on August 1st, 2021, I have a very special guest other than our panels that happen with Karen Wennerlind, an astrologer that's been on for various times. And our subject is going to be an astrological measurement part of Iranian astrology that I'm fascinated with, has its own history, and it's a lot about Transneptunian, if I have that right, points. And three of them happen to be creating a Yod called the finger of God. But what is that? That is where generally you want to make salad dressing, I always say, because nothing really connects. But if you blend it and work with its highest mean, in other words, that emphasis of our highest good, then there is a potential development that it's seeking to move within us. So Karen Wennerlind, she is a Western and Uranian astrology consultant, and she incorporates business, astrology, tarot, mythology, metaphysics, and mediumship for her client-centered approach. Karen does online study group. She teaches classes and workshops. She's the past board positions for Washington State Astrology Association and Kepler College, which is also a 4-year college based out of Seattle, Washington, that's international. Camp Edgewood Church of Divine Grace of National Spiritualist Association of Churches. And she is the current treasurer of the Council of Vedic Astrology. And Karen's located in Seattle, Washington, and has been on, as I said, many times since 2019 and this year and last year. So it's really a pleasure. Hi, Karen. I'm so glad we're connecting again.
Awesome. Hi, Sue. It's good to see you.
It is. Tell me about Iranian astrology for myself and those that don't really study this aspect of astrology.
So Iranian astrology is fussy. It likes all these little tiny measurements that we have in astrology, things like midpoints. And while all astrology uses aspects, Iranian astrology aspects are very small. They're not large at all. It seeks for aspects that create action. So it's really important with Uranian that something's going to happen out of whatever you're looking at. So if it's just a weak aspect, might happen, might not happen, we're not really that interested in it, because the Uranian system is again more outward oriented rather than inward oriented.
Thank you. That is illuminating, actually. And I know that I have the books of it because there are midpoints. It was really quite organized. I think Witte, you were mentioning, Witte, was the founder of it back at World War I. And it was, for the focus.
Yeah. And, and he was an artilleryman at the time in World War I. And so he wanted to be as accurate as possible and discovered that, oh my gosh, I can use this system. He developed the system so that he could be more accurate. And he discovered 4 little points in the sky that he didn't know what they were, but he was able to say these points repeated themselves over and over again. And so he created a system with a small group of people all, developing what the meanings of those points might be and how to use them within their lives. And yeah, so it started with 4 extra points. They're calculated points, but primarily they use the traditional planets in astrology and add in these 8 extra points as flavoring and intensity and as a spike for action.
Well, I think our conversation, you're going to even give further depth how it really does resonate. I'm fascinated because I know for myself, when I have a reading or education about the midpoints, which are within that system of his, it is really incredible that like this midpoint between the sun and the moon, I think Anne Orderly says is almost a necessity for everybody to know what it is in their chart. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of these things astrologically that shows more. This Yod that is a long term, you said the long,
Here comes Tux.
I love him.
He came in from outside just to talk to us.
It's a good, like a show thing. The curtain has started and here we are now.
Of course. So our animals have to show up. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So these 3 are, maybe we should talk about each one. There's an apex and a yod for our audience that's in conjunct a sextile 2 points. And it is,
so a yod is an aspect pattern. It's fairly unusual to happen. And so when they do, the points that are in conjunct are not happy. They don't understand each other at all. And so the point at the very center is a little point called Admetos. And Admetos is he's tough. He's harsh. He's the ground. He's your raw materials. He rules everything in the ground. He's durable and stable. He doesn't like to change. But he is a part of the whole cycle of life. So there's a movement there. He wants things that are dying to die, to be done living. And then he wants that to putrefy and get all gross and disgusting and turn into the dirt again and allow itself to be fertilizer for the new growth that's coming. But when you're dying, you don't know what's coming. And it doesn't look, and what you think it's going to be, you don't ever know. So part of the problem with dealing with Admetos is that change is afoot. And you can spend a lot of time resisting that change. But the more you resist it, the stinkier it gets. So
it's like,
what is that?
Yeah, it's like an egg. I remember once I did Easter eggs for some children that I was partnering with this long term caring for as a step person with these kids. So we had the Easter eggs out, and the boy just did not want to give up on these eggs. He'd never had these colored eggs, and we kept them for a long time, it turned out, because I'm sorry to say, when they opened up, talk about putrid, there was a maggot. And it was like,
oh my gosh.
It really does show that the things, there's a reason why. Yeah, there's decay. There's life and decay. The leaves fall, they go into the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, so. And so on a psychological level, you can drag around your wounds with you for years, but they're dead and gone, and they're stinky, and they're messing with your life. And so when we have pieces that are aspecting in your natal chart with Admetos, the first place I would ask people when I see that is, what in your life do you need to let go of, like 6 months ago? Because you know what it is. You may not like it. You may not want to, right? But it's got to go. Got to go.
Yeah, there's no choice.
Yeah. And people are often with Admetos in resistance to the reality of what life really is, of what's going on. So you can, because Admetos doesn't want to change. By its nature, it's really fixed. It doesn't want to change. And right now, Admetos is in the sign of Gemini. So it's in the sign that represents the mind and our ideas and how we learn and what's important to, what's important to us, what excites us, where we want to go, because it's cool, it's fun, it's exciting. And it's a little chatterbox of a little kid, it's like really infectious and happy energy. And here's this Debbie Downer coming in to this Gemini saying, well, what are you thinking? And is that true? And I get you're really excited about that, but really, kid, come on. Yeah.
And what degree is it again, Karen?
So right now, today on August 1st, it's at 3 degrees of Gemini.
Oh, meaning that because our nodes, North Node, and they go retrograde in their cycle, we will be approaching 3 degrees within now, and when it departs on January 18th, probably somewhere in the fall.
Sure, you bet. Well, and so that brings more energy up. So wherever, because Admetos, these outer planets or points, they're not planets, outer points move so slowly. I mean, Admetos takes, what is it? Admetos, I have to look on my cheat sheet, takes 617 years to go in one orbit around the sun. So it's a tremendously long period of time. The farthest out planet is Pluto, and it takes 247 years.
Yeah.
So, 3 times as much.
Yeah. I know Eris is 500 and some. I read about that. Eris? Yeah, because Eris is Pluto squaring Eris. Yeah. So it's long cycles. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they stay in one place for a very long time. If 360 minutes of arc are one astrology circle, 617 years would be just over half a degree movement every year, or not quite half a degree. So it's very, very slow. So it'll go from 3 degrees Gemini 01 at by January 2022, it'll be at 3 degrees 45 minutes of orb. So that's really slow. Since our sun moves 1 whole degree every single day.
Well, right? In some ways, in Gemini, it seems like there's great opportunity because how we think is how we feel, and how we feel is what we get. The law of attraction is, realized it's our feeling and beliefs. So, for instance, I'm taking a personal myth class with Dr. Tad, and it's like, what stories am I telling myself? So I'm thinking this is where maybe Admetos could be my friend by realizing, ditch that one. I may have served me as a kid, but hey, do I want that truth? Maybe I can rescript it.
Exactly. Yeah. Or
half full instead of half empty or something.
Yeah.
Or what were you going to say?
And rearrange it so that it's taking you in another direction, because this Admetos will, when you really look at what are the ideas that I have in my head, because I get that there are facts, but the facts are kind of scientific, mathematical. They're not everyday practical. It's like, well, be kind to other people. That's a good piece of belief system. But there are places where, if you're kind to a drug addict, that is not going to help them. Now let's do the appropriate behavior. If you're kind to a child who is misbehaving, that kindness might look like you walk away from him and go, you're boring. I'm not playing with you while you behave like this, and you just go away. It doesn't feel kind,
but it's like tough love.
Yeah. And it's a necessary thing. And the earlier you get, it's like anything in life, when the earlier you get there, when you feel like, oh, something's not quite right, and you examine it, the easier it is to deal with, because it's not entrenched, it's not in you. It's not so hard to pull out. So when Admetos is interacting with someone's personal chart, then this is almost a therapy moment. It's a time to go deeper inside. And with Gemini is to look at, well, what are my underlying belief systems? What's truly important to me? Where are my feelings wrong?
Yeah.
Because a lot,
Yeah, well, it reminds me too of the conditioning. I'm thinking of Saturn. We just left all that stellium with Saturn. And one of the big code words, it seemed, was conditioning. Is this authentic, or is it, where did I get that idea?
Yeah, and has it served its purpose?
Yes, so good.
So it just moved into Gemini in 2017. And before it was in Gemini, it spent many, many, many years in Taurus. And Taurus is practical and earth-based, and let's do life in a very practical. I need money to survive. What do I need to survive?
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you grew up during the Depression, money and resources, you had a garden, you stored food, you did a lot of really practical things.
Self-reliant. Yeah,
exactly. And it was so, and now it's changed, so that, isn't it interesting that we're living now in an age where communication is so vital and essential. In Taurus, it's like you communicated about your basic needs
and values. Yes.
And you didn't need to communicate. Communication was more important. It was about stuff. It was about things that you needed or could do. It was about doing, because Taurus was about doing. Well, Gemini is not about doing. It's about talking about doing.
Sharing, connecting. Just connecting.
It's like, there's this, and then there's that, and then da 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 da. Well, a lot of people are still stuck in if you say it, it must be true.
Oh, yes.
When all Gemini wants to do is just talk about it. Okay, let's throw a lot of ideas out.
Yeah, explore the options, see the diversity, try to figure out, is there another side of this, which actually is good if we're trying to unearth what has been stinky. Where is it stinky? Yeah,
it's like, and to have a good friend, it's like, when somebody says something, it's like, really? It's like to challenge somebody and go, wow, really? Where did you get that idea from? That's really interesting that you think that. Where did that come from? Because then that's kind of a service that you could have with your friends when they're saying something that's just kind of weird. It's like, what is that? And as we're changing and becoming more flexible and more inclusive in the world we're trying to create, then certain patterns of speech, it's like there's a Southern phrase that I absolutely hate, and it's a phrase that is used often with, "Oh, there, aren't you just special? Aren't you sweet?
Oh,
Aren't you just such a good girl?" It's like, oh, excuse me, shut up.
Yeah, because it's not truthful. It's like a backward.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
They're trying to compliment you and tear you down by their balls at the same time,
Yeah.
So it's like, oh no, passive aggressive. Sorry.
Yeah.
So to become, and in yourself too, is to listen to what you're saying. It's like, ooh, that was a little catty, or that was a little passive aggressive, or ooh, that was really jealous.
Or what was the
was,
real intent? Yeah.
Yeah. And then go, what in me caused me to, that's the first thing that came up that I needed to respond like that. Ooh, okay. And then, and you kind of grimace and go, ooh, what did I do? So that because it's not until we get uncomfortable with something that we recognize that something needs to shift. Something
isn't this
us.
True? Yeah. And really, Karen, that is very significant for the political nature, the emotional nature here, at least in this country, and also abroad, where maybe because of communication, groups are becoming visible to each other. They're connecting the truths of realities, and people are declaring, no, it's going to be more inclusive, not exclusive, or not talked to about this manner or treated. So it's adjusting in a lot of ways. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and I taught class last night, and we were talking about Germany, and I realized that a lot of the words I used to describe Germany were just, kind of not, it's like, ooh, that's an old term, and I need to rethink the ideas of how I speak about a country or a place or any person, actually. But that really stuck with me last night in class, because it's like, here's a point of view about a country that's not necessarily a true thing.
Yes.
Now,
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. And
because I think the circle's broadening all the time, and so how we incorporate. But go ahead. Yes. Yeah.
Well, and so a piece of Gemini, of having Admetos and Gemini underlying everything, right? The underlying piece is that as it's just moving in, it's like, oh, what old ways have I had about talking about people and cultures and assumptions that I've made about the other, right? Or the world, or the earth, climate change, or, all these ideas that I have, all these assumptions that I made about what is true, what is real. And to find out now that, oh, some of those aren't so true. It's like, oh, Italians aren't lazy. That was a common one when I was a kid, was that Italian people were lazy. It's like, that's crazy. Are you kidding me?
Must have come from the war, I guess.
Who knows? But
I don't know either.
I had
we don't know.
And we don't know where it came from, right? But it's there I'm old enough, it's in my head, it's part of my program. I have to go, whoops, stop, time out. That's not true. I was in Italy, and I saw real Italian people, because we could connect. The only way we used to be able to connect with people was by actually physically going to a place and meeting a person of that culture or that nationality. But when we are on Zoom,
Yes.
we can meet people from all over the world, and they're just like us. Dang, isn't that great?
Yeah, it is. And I think I'm just thinking too with Taurus, there's the purpose so involved with the whole, because it's value, it's Venus, it's purpose. And so the purpose is for that self-resilience, that survival that you said, it's about me. And whereas Gemini is that connection, but by the time it moves to that, and so I can see where at least is us and, right? It has that more potentiality. Well, this is fascinating because we haven't even gotten to the sextile. And I think right off the bat, I know that the issue is they're in cahoots. I mean, the sextile planets are connecting to each other. It's how they can focus in. But I'm already sensing that there is a pathway because of the fact that Admetos, Ademetus, I have that right, I hope. Yeah, for folks out there, is in Gemini, meaning that this sextile in some ways isn't perhaps as strange as it would have been in, of course, it didn't have a Yod.
Taurus.
Yeah. I don't know if I had a Yod then, but it has a Yod now, and it's going on.
It did. We'll talk about that after your break.
Oh,
how about that? Okay.
Well, I am with Karen Wennerlind, astrologer, Uranian and Western astrologer from Seattle, Washington, who teaches and consults. And this is Talk Cosmos, August 1st with Neptunian Points Yod. We're going to play with our shadows. All right, we'll be back.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Leo, ruled by the solar sun. Having departed from a cycle based on the internal process of emotional attachments requiring security and safety, the energy of Leo externally manifests our legacy through children and artistic creations. As a fixed Yang fire sign that desires to ignite actualization, Leo the lion takes the risk to generously exhibit love and welcome all to share their stage with joyous pleasure for living life.
This is Dr. Judy Safrir. I'm a holistic psychiatrist in the Boston area and an evolutionary astrologer. And you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we discuss the meaningfulness of our roots in the stars.
Alternative Talk 1150, online at 1150kknw.com.
Well, very good. Back again, and now we've talked about these amazing Transneptunian points, Admetos, the stinky pot, no, but truly it is where life needs to end things, so we need to get on board and recognize it happens to be at 3 degrees Gemini. And the other, so here, if just to recap, it's points in our, not points, but aspects in our thinking is wanting to shift, especially if it's in a chart for the USA and it's worldwide and it's there for a long time and personal. So these sextile points, Cupido and Apollan. Yeah. And that's, if you could give those degrees and what they signify and what this struggle is doing. Yeah. Thanks.
So Cupido is at 2 degrees of Capricorn, and it's very close to what we call a world point. So a solstice point is the cardinal ingress. And so in this case, it's just past the winter ingress in Capricorn. And so when things hit that point, they become really extreme and really more profound. A Cupido is the fastest moving of the of the Uranian points. It will have one orbit around the sun in 262 years. So it's just a little bit faster than Pluto is. And so it travels a little bit with can travel with Pluto. Pluto's just leaving Capricorn now. And Cupido is a happy planet. Cupido is about home and family and relationships and belonging, who we're connected to. It's about integration and bringing things together, creating union, creating marriages, creating art. There comes another cat.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let it be.
But so that's the positive about Cupido. But when you get a group of people who all have the same mindset together, you can become a clan, or you can become a religion, or you could become exclusive, which is why marriages are there. So it creates an exclusive union. So the idea with Cupido is that like-minded people like to get together with each other. It's like, well, yeah, astrologers like to hang with astrologers, and tech geeks with tech geeks, and et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on. You like to hang out with people that you have stuff in common with, where you can have, where you can enjoy it. It's really, Cupido is very much about the quality of our relations. And you would think that, that's a really positive piece. And it is. It's very positive until it gets solid, until it's so exclusive that you, anybody who is not an astrologer, you don't talk to. Anybody who is not Catholic, you don't talk to. Anybody who's not a Boy Scout, you don't talk to. It can become very rigid,
narrow,
very exclusive. So that's the negative and the extreme. And so what the inconjunct to Admetos is saying, where in your life that you think everything is just wonderful, thank you very much, life is really good, but where in your relationships, where in your everyday behaviors are you excluding whole swaths of society? Now, that's on one level, a really good thing as we become more aware of, cultural programming and, trying to create a more equal society, because you have to acknowledge where it's been stuck in a particular point of view before you can change it. If you don't acknowledge it, you're not going to be able to change things. So the inconjunct is just saying, oh, this is hard because I can't go back and relate to a part of me that I'm trying to disown. And that's where we get into the shadow. It's like, oh, I'm not one of those bad people that discriminates against Black people.
Because they give rationalizations of like something or other. Yeah, exactly. Here's this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so
not realizing that this part of their life is just totally out of step because it doesn't recognize the needs of the person.
Yeah. Well, and while they personally may not be doing anything in particular that is offensive, to recognize that, oh, but society as a whole has created patterns that have made it more difficult. So the system has a certain amount of corruption in it, given where the culture is headed and what it wants, how it wants to be inclusive. So that's a struggle. And our other point is Apollan, and it's also really a wonderful point. It has generally Apollan has a really wide perspective, and it creates a place where you want to have great success. So you work really hard to, if somebody's famous, right, they've spent 20 years in the background getting to the point where all of a sudden they're an overnight success, right? And so that's and it sees in very far-reaching ways, and it wants to have peace, and it wants to have equality, and believe in science, and it wants enough, not just enough for everyone, but abundance for everyone. And so in that abundance, it can get caught up in going, but my ideas will bring fame and glory. And now I'm going to focus just on what I think is the way, and not on, and maybe on the big picture, and that I can't focus on details, on the things, well, how do I get there? So, it's like making chocolate chip cookies. There's steps. So you do step one, you take the butter out of the refrigerator so it softens. You don't just throw the butter in the
chunky
thing.
like
it just isn't going to work, right? But that's when true. So you have to get mindset of chocolate chip cookies. And when you're having these discussions with yourself about the big picture, you can say, well, it's like this, and it's like that, and it's like this. But in the meanwhile, you just overlook what is absolutely the most obvious thing in the world. It's like, oh yeah, but there is this thing over here. Yeah. It's like not taking the butter out of the refrigerator, and you're trying to make cookies this second, and the butter is too hard. So then you throw it in the refrigerator, you throw it in the microwave, and it melts. And then your chocolate chip cookies are yucky.
Yeah. Now, what sign is this Apollan in? And I think they're both deal with Jupiter in a sense. They're like a mix of Jupiter.
So Apollan is at 3 degrees of Scorpio. So Scorpio is what we call a fixed sign, and fixed signs are stubborn. And Apollan isn't normally a stubborn kind of energy. It's easy because it wants to always see the big picture. And here's Scorpio saying, so one of the places in Scorpio can be, I am so sure that this is the right way to do this thing. Wind turbines are going to solve our problem with electrical generation for the whole world. And that's just the end of story, be all, end all, and nothing else is true. Well, not so much. But go for going after that wind turbine thing, right? It's like and it gives you the stick-to-itness to stick with whatever your ideas are. So that's, and you can stay in relationships and in work groups with people and organizations that are going towards the values and the things you want to accomplish. There can be a tendency during that period of time to say, but the leaders aren't pure.
Oh,
Okay.
well, there is the shadow side, which we're talking about too, involved with this, because whenever you try to get energies that don't collaborate easily, or even if they do, they bump up against all of that. And there is control and possible manipulation to have power, because it is a soul growth. Scorpio is exchanging those resources, and they want, if it feeds them, it's power. And if it's not, maybe on the shadow side, they would manipulate in order to get it work anyway.
Right. To make it work.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to make it work. So, but regardless. Yeah.
The ends and the means.
Mm-hmm. And so our Cupido and our Apollan are talking to each other real nice. You know, we've got these groups of people that can talk to each other. Because they're in a sextile relationship with each other. But when they start talking about that Admetos guy out there, that problem that's in that Yod, that's out there, then we don't agree. And now all of a sudden it's the Democrats and the Republicans, and it's, it's the my way or the highway. So this religious group is the only one the only path to God, right? And it's like, not so much. You can. And since both of those points are part of the Yod, there can be a break, and we're looking at Gemini, there's a breakdown into the us's and the them's. Who is my group, and they become the in group, and here's the folks that are like me, so they are good. And so if you're looking for belonging, then you have to follow every step. You can't deviate from, so this is really intense, because you can't deviate from the party line. Okay, so there's no room in this conversation to have a conversation.
No, because the ideal would be, thinking often I have with the North Node in Gemini, bring in more words with different definitions to bridge a new concept. They might elicit some common ground. Right. But I can see that because we are talking about a consensus, Capricorn can be consensus, and Scorpio can be very controlling as far as resources, that can work. So if just looking on some political basis, like thinking environmentally, trying to say that, no, we don't need pipeline energy across sacred ground. We don't need, for instance, as one political problem we have, and there's so many to choose from.
There are.
It's like, pick up sticks. Oh,
yeah, it's like, one more.
I wish it were. Yeah. I wish we could, solve them.
Yeah. So this particular Yod, since it's at early degrees in a sign, it's also very immature in its thinking. It hasn't developed its ideas fully to be able to hold the deeper conversation that wants to be held. Okay, because sometimes Apollan just says, here's the big picture, don't mess with the little stuff, and it doesn't ever get to the root cause of something. It just says, okay, it's all better now. We talked about it, it's all better. It's like when somebody hurts you and they come back and they apologize, but it's like, I'm really sorry that I hurt your feelings. Do you want to get together on Tuesday? It's like, no, I'm still mad at you. But why are
because
you
not
mad
res-
at me?
and not
I
respected.
apologize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this really does get down to some of the significant dilemmas. I mean, the one, for lack of words, right? I mean, I could spend a long time, but just to say that the dignity, really recognizing the value of another individual that has a different sense of acting apparent to themselves, right? Because somebody else could say, hey, what's the difference? You're, whatever, but to the self, so that they're not recognizing, like in that case, if someone really upsets you, it's maybe because they don't recognize who you are and misjudge or misunderstand, or just plain don't see the value that you have any value. And so it's not a quick fix. And
it's and while this won't affect like every person on the planet, these 3 points have been aspecting each other off and on, not necessarily in this yod, but they've been aspecting each other off and on since 1903. They moved that slowly, with intense periods where there's been an intensity of this us against them or warrior kind of mentality during, I'm going to give you some dates, 1927 to 1931, again from 1945 to 49, and from 1976 to 1992.
Wow.
The current yod that we're in, we've been in since 2017. And so it's been getting worse. So since 1903, this idea of the us versus them, and has been much more systematized. And because we have media that we didn't have before, it's much easier to judge others because they're not you, right? It's I don't relate. They're not me, so they must be bad or wrong, or I have to fear them because of that piece. And that's a part of that shadow that we become aware of. That's kind of a world shadow that's been underlying the whole last century, since 1903. And these war periods, 1927 to 31 and 45 to 49, these war periods were very much breaking points. The stories and the way people treated each other, and that detachment from humanity, and that men came back from war, those world wars, and they didn't talk about what it was like being in that war. And
we've just begun to understand post-traumatic stress disorder, which it is really, where they're unable to, there's so many components in that. I know it's a term used a lot, but I am very familiar. I've read a bit about it, and there's a guilt factor. There's so many there's important factors involved with it.
And I think it's wonderful that now this Admetos has changed sides. It's in Gemini. It's healthy to talk about that old crap. I don't have to hide it anymore. So here's a way that Admetos goes and attacks that shadow and makes it okay. And as we go farther along, it's going to be even more okay and even more okay as we, as it becomes more socially acceptable to not.
I think so, because there's certainly argument and debate, and it does tax a person's ability. And also, as we had talked, which we don't have a lot of time here to talk about, but the fact of projection, what we don't own. I think this is what you had brought up. What we don't own for ourselves, we tend to think, somebody else has it, and aren't they terrible? Whereas actually, if we can just realize that, and this is a lot with the myth business that I'm working with Dr. Tad, but yes, if by talking and getting past in bridging larger conversations and opening up arenas, there's hope. There's hope. There's got to be hope. It may be messy. It might be like finger painting, throwing it on the wall. I don't know, but maybe there's ways to bridge.
Yeah. Well, and learning how to have that process of loving kindness for yourself and being, warts and all. I am not a perfect being. and it's because of our projections that we can learn, we can grow, we can be more contained and happier with who we are, because we're not having to make excuses.
And there's always, the universe is shifting, it's always moving, which we realize. And the point being that the dispositors, the rulers in astrology that we look at, for instance, if we look at Capricorn, it's going to be Saturn, and Saturn right now is in Aquarius. It has shifted over. I mean, there's a whole new bridge that it's introducing and linking up to look at the pros and the cons, as we do in life. So nothing is static. So that's we're involved. It's good. I do want to mention that next week we will have, no, it won't be the Moonbeam team. It will be another panel. And at the I know, it is Cosmic Collaboration. That's what it'll be.
Oh, cool.
But I'm with Karen Wennerlind, Seattle Astrologer, Western and Uranian, and you can find her on Talk Cosmos. You have an email, I think that's the best way, isn't it, Karen?
Yeah. So it's Karen at seattleastrologer.com.
Oh, good. Yes.
Very
Seattle
easy.
Astrologer. And always at Talk Cosmos. So you can always go online and see under the, and it's August 1st. We're talking about this Uranian points. The midpoints is really a very, it's advanced in the sense of learning in a way. There's a lot of building blocks, but if you're going to get a reading, it's very appropriate. It speaks great information.
Yeah. And again, it adds specificity and detail, rather than you don't do an astrology reading just with Transneptunian points. The Transneptunian points are whipped cream on your ice cream.
Yeah, good. Well, gee whiz. So we have a world point here with Cupido, I think you said.
Yeah.
And Cupido is Jupiter and
Venus. Yeah.
Which is most interesting. So it's that benefic sense, but it's working with Apollan, which is Jupiter, and Gemini, that's more of the cerebral. Let's see some big
picture guys.
Yeah. Along with, some of your great thinking that you guys think is so cool with your little nitty gritty group is sort of ready to ditch. So let's ditch it.
Well, and you can't snap your fingers and make it happen. It requires, that when you're dealing with your shadow, it takes a lot of awareness. But once you have the awareness and you go through your resistances, very often it's like, oh yeah, that was crazy.
That is so beautiful. I think of our shadow, we certainly talked about a lot that it is, and it takes that strength and courage and willingness. So I thank you so much.
It's our creativity.
Yes. And we're entering Leo. It's time. Get
That's
that
right.
heart and brain together. I know there's a conjunction you said with Mercury on the 8th. So is it the 8th? Yes.
On the 1st today.
On the 1st. Oh, it's today.
It's
Well, we started the process. All right.
Yeah.
Blessings. Thank you, Karen.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.